This is The Space Shot, episode 229 for December 29th, 2017. The Trouble with Tribbles and Schedules, Hannah Arendt, Part 2. Hey everyone, welcome to The Space Shot, your daily space history, pop culture, and news fix. I'm John Molnix. First off, apologies for today's episode coming out so late. My work schedule has been even more crazy the past 48 hours, so I apologize for the inconvenience on the late releases. I've got some space news that broke shortly after I released yesterday's episode. For the first time, the SpaceX Falcon Heavy is vertical at Launch Pad 39A at Kennedy Space Center. SpaceX is performing tests ahead of the maiden launch of the Falcon Heavy sometime in January. I've still got my fingers crossed for a late January launch because there's a small chance I can see it in person. Even if I can't see it in person, I'm excited all the same. If the launch of the Falcon Heavy is successful, SpaceX will have the most powerful operational rocket and the second most powerful rocket in history behind the Saturn V. In the show notes, I'm linking to a few videos and pictures of the Falcon Heavy on the launch pad. It is a beautiful sight that you've got to check out. In the last episode, we were talking about Hannah Arendt and her essay on the conquest of space, and this article got me thinking about how science is communicated to the non-technical public and some other things related to storytelling, and there's really a whole bunch that I want to cover over the coming months, and as I dove into that article more, I realized that it is a good starting point for some other discussions. If you've missed yesterday's episode, go back and check it out now. There's a few quotes in that episode that relate to what I'm talking about today. Alright, so let's dive into this, and bear with me because these are some concepts I'm still wrestling with and exploring myself, and I'll revisit these over the coming weeks and months. First off, I want to ask a question that goes along with one of the themes in Arendt's piece, and that is limitations. What are the limits of our ability to explain science and nature? If we've reached a time, as Arendt argues, that, quote, science reached its most glorious and at the same time most baffling achievements, how are new discoveries to be communicated to the public? How do we translate findings that require a knowledge of mathematics, physics, and science to a majority of the population that hasn't had a science class since high school or college? This is a question that I want to look at every now and then over the coming months, so even though I don't have an answer today, it is something that I'm going to be thinking about. Another topic that Arendt was discussing in this essay is when she said that humanity has, quote, conquered space, and it's not necessarily that we've conquered space, but have instead started on a path that makes us believe we have. Arendt argues that we are limited in conquering space because we are limited by our corporeal form. Here's a quote from Arendt that relates to what I've just been talking about. Quote, to be sure, all we plan to do now is to explore our own immediate surroundings in the universe, the infinitely small place that the human race could reach even if it were to travel with the velocity of light. In view of man's lifespan, the only absolute limitation left at the present moment, it is quite unlikely that he will ever go much further. But even for this limited job, we have to leave the world of our senses and of our bodies, not only in imagination, but in reality. Arendt argues that we will be limited in conquering space because we are human. Arendt also argues that everyday language will give way to mathematical signs and scientific knowledge, and this will make us lose what makes us human in a biological and social sense. That brings up the question of how we overcome two limitations, specifically communicating science and the biological limitations of human spaceflight as we push across our solar system. This is a pretty heavy topic, and it's something I want to dive into more detail on over the coming months. I apologize for what might be a random assortment of questions and statements. I just haven't had as much free time to go over these thoughts as I normally do. On the topic of biological limitations, when I was reading Endurance by Scott Kelly, one of the things that struck me was the physical effects of long-term microgravity on the human body. Reading the descriptions of what happened to Kelly after he landed on Earth can make your skin crawl a bit. The biological limitations of human bodies is something that NASA really needs to figure out answers for before we can really push out farther into the solar system. Thank you all for indulging me a little political theory over the past few days. It was an interesting change of pace, looking at something more theoretical instead of just history, so I'm happy we took a little detour the past 2 episodes.
But I have something from the far reaches of the galaxy. Surely you want...
Not at your price.
Oh, what is it? Is it alive? May I hold it? Oh, it's adorable. What is it?
What is it? Why, lovely lady, it's a tribble.
A tribble?
Only the sweetest creature known to man. Except, of course, your lovely self.
Oh, it's purring. Listen, it's purring.
It's only saying that it likes you.
Are you selling them?
That's what we're trying to decide.
And lest you think I've forgotten that this podcast also covers pop culture, on this day in 1967, the Star Trek original series episode, The Trouble with Tribbles, aired on TV. This is one of the more light-hearted episodes of Star Trek, one where we are introduced to the Tribble, an alien life form that eats, reproduces a prodigious amount, and purrs. Also, a happy belated birthday to Nichelle Nichols, who just celebrated her 85th birthday on December 28th. I hope you enjoyed today's podcast. I'd appreciate it if you could leave a review on iTunes. If you do that, screenshot it and send it to me at John Molnix pretty much everywhere on the internet, and I'll shoot you a Space Shot sticker and a little thank you. Also, make sure you hit the subscribe button, that way you don't miss any of the daily episodes. As always, the show notes have more information on today's episode. If you have questions or comments, you can hit me up on Instagram and Twitter. Find me at John Molnix. I'm always up to chat. You can also connect with me on Facebook. Just search The Space Shot or click the link in the show notes. I'm John Molnix, and I'll catch you on the flip side.